Invite icon. Oh, it says this meeting is being live streamed.
Yeah, I think it worked. I just had to clear my um, cache so it wasn't reloading from a time before.
Oh, it says this meeting is being live streamed.
Yeah, I think it worked. I just had to
Oh,
clear
now
my
it's repeating us.
um, cache so it wasn't reloading from a time before.
Oh, it says this meeting is being live streamed.
Okay, so there is a 20-second delay, and I had to turn off my audio feed so that it worked, but we're here and hopefully we can trim this part.
Okay. So, since we're on your channel, do you want to start the introductions?
Sure. So I'm Sarah Norris, and this is my YouTube channel. And I'm here today with my good friend Diane Hilleary. And we're here to start experimenting with what it's like to tell our stories out loud. And I have to give Diane all the credit for um, thinking this through and deciding it was time. And so we're definitely going to start by focusing more on Diane's story and giving her the spotlight. But I'm happy to have been the one to figure out the tech side of things and get us live. So we're here today on my channel. In the future, we might be on Diane's channel, but we're figuring this out as we go.
Mm-hmm. I love that about us. We figure out a lot of things as we go.
Very true.
Um, Go ahead.
I was just going to say, as a means of what we're doing here and an introduction, I we're wanting to be storytellers and share our stories. And I want to give you, Diane, the microphone in just a second. But I just wanted to do a little bit of a callback to when I worked at the Star Institute. This was something that my colleague at the time, Carrie Einck, and I had really recognized the importance of stories with the clients that we were supporting. And it feels like a full circle moment to be live with you. And I just want to say and send love to Carrie because I feel like this is almost like carrying the torch from that in a way. And with that said, I'd love for you to jump in and say what's coming up on your heart right now, Diane.
Well, I thank you so much for sharing that, and I'll pop in now and share how we met, and then maybe we can each do a little bit of background or intro as well for people who might not know one of us. So the way that I found Sarah was I was reading the book Divergent Minds. I think that's what it's called. And this was during COVID, and I can't remember how I came across the book, but when I started reading it, I was like, oh, wow, this is describing me and all of my clients. And so Sarah's name was mentioned in the book as the person who started or helped found the adult sensory processing aspect. I'm going to let you tell it because I don't know that part. What did you do?
Yeah, so Carrie and I were both interviewed. We had worked together with Lucy Jane Miller to basically have a pilot program for working with adults with sensory processing disorder.
Hmm.
And historically, sensory processing disorder or sensory integration dysfunction, it's been called many different things. Uh, the target was really always children because it was considered like a developmental thing. Um, and there had been adults calling Star saying, "What about us? We need help too." And that really spoke to Lucy's heart. And when she hired both Carrie and myself, she asked us if we would be willing to work with adults. So it was because she gave us that opportunity that we were able to step into it and help build it from the ground up with the adult clients that had been asking to come.
Hmm.
And then Janara, the author of that book, reached out to interview us because at the time and even still today, there's not a lot of information out there about neurodivergence in adulthood, and in particular, the sensory processing disorder, little piece of the pie. So, yeah, it was such an honor to be featured in her book and to be able to connect with people like you because of that.
Yeah, so that it's so fun, I think, to be connected by a book, by seeing your name in a book, and now, to consider you one of my best friends. It's really lovely. I tell people that often um, because I struggle with loneliness and I'm always looking for community, that it's easy to look around our communities and be like, I don't see anyone here that seems like the friend I'm really looking for. And so I think it's a fun story to be like, yeah, we live in different states. I did look around my community and be like, I'm really having a hard time I've moved to a new place. I'm having a hard time making friends. And thanks to Zoom, I get to hang out with you, twice a week, maybe three times a week, on the different meetings and things that maybe more than that sometimes on all the meetings that we're doing together. And then I get to hang out with you in person several times a year too, and it's been such a gift. So thank you to that book for connecting us.
Yeah, it felt like divine timing, to use that term very loosely, because like you said, it was during COVID. That book had come out, I think, shortly before, even during COVID. And I had moved and I was feeling really isolated and alone. I had just started my own business. And so I was very hungry actually for connection at the time. And what I love is that you just followed that tug on your heart to reach out, and look where it's led us. And I think I hear from people all the time, like, wow, we're so surprised how accessible you are, Sarah. I'm like, yeah, not very many people actually. Like, I know I'm out there and people know who I am. And that kind of makes me scared that I'm known. But I'm also like, I desire connection and depth and friendship. And I'm very open. And I think, especially at the time when you reached out, I was probably even desperate
Mm,
for connection, as we
me
all
too.
were.
Me too. Me too. Yeah. Yeah, so we did some shared. So I will just say a little bit more about my background. I have been a psychotherapist for the last 20 years. I'm trained as a social worker. And um, during COVID, I had moved because of, COVID circumstances. We needed more space. So me and my ex-husband, my husband at the time, and the kids, we came to stay with his family in Tybee Island. And and it ended up being such a transformative time for me. I really connected with nature here. I had been in Atlanta for most of my adult life, and so being we where we stayed during COVID was right on the ocean and the beaches were closed. So it was basically, just us and a few other folks who were living there. We were staying in a place that was mostly rentals and mostly not allowed to be rented during that time. So so yeah, in over the last few years, I've been journeying from being more in all these, traditional roles as a research-based psychotherapist and a wife and mother in a pretty traditional marriage, and to, coming out as queer and learning all about my neurodivergence and all those, parts of my sensitivities and gifts, as well as this intuitive awakening, connecting with nature and connecting with new forms of, energy and spiritual ways of knowing. And it's been such a beautiful and fun journey to be alongside you for. And so I'm grateful for the safety we've created, and this is something I've wanted to do for a long time, to share my story in a more public way, and I have felt really scared. And so I am grateful that I feel so safe with you, that it feels like we're just having a conversation with friends and we happen to be live streaming it.
Yeah. And as long as we forget that we're live streaming it, it stays comfortable.
Right. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say how beautiful has been to witness you along this journey. And I've seen you time and again be shaken, like to the core, with just how painful and brutal some of the things that you've gone through have been. And I've seen you have so much integrity to come back and to live from your heart and to return to that authenticity. And it's bringing tears to my eyes just how beautiful it's been to witness you, like all of the transitions and changes that you've been through since the time we met in 2019, 2020. Um, it's been, for me personally, so helpful to just see what's possible. All of the like, oh, I couldn't do that. Oh, that would be too disruptive. Oh, what about my kids? What about my family? And to see that you've been so brave has been such a beautiful thing for me. Um, and I'm really excited about other people in my life getting a chance to know you and your story and to get that glimmer of what's possible. Um, because I think there's so many of us that believe we have to live small and within limitations. And I've watched you kind of blow all of that out of the water, but also in such a like gentle and gradual way where it hasn't felt like from an external perspective like it's been that explosive. I'm sure it's been excruciating for you. Um, but I guess I'll jump into a little bit of an introduction of myself for anybody who's watching on your end that may not know me very well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm an occupational therapist by training, and about 2019 is when I started to really venture into the world of coaching as well. And similarly to you, Diane, there was a lot of like traditional roles that I really felt, I guess, comfortable staying within the lines of this is what is expected of me. So, of course, I'm going to do that. And my journey has not been the same as yours, and the challenges that I faced have not been exactly the same, but there've been so many common threads about waking up to authenticity. And it's been empowering to watch you go your way and knowing that it's maybe a different way than mine, but it's given me that like, well, what if I follow my heart? Where is it going to lead me?
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a lot of following other people's expectations or desires for a long, long time. And there was a lot of chaos in my life. And I'm not going to say that it's not chaotic now,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm in it in a way that I wasn't before. I felt like life was pulling me. And now I feel like I've finally figured out like, where's the helm? And I'm at least trying to hold on and steer this ship. So as far as my occupational therapy background goes, I started out working with kids. And initially, it was with all different types of disabilities. Um, but I was always really drawn to the sensory kids. And at first, I didn't know really why. It's just, I understood them. It was interesting to me. But as I became more and more awake, the more I recognized it was because I too am wired differently. And I feel like I have been given this place in life where I feel like I live between worlds where I'm not neurotypical, but I'm not your stereotypical like autistic person or someone with sensory processing issues. But I understand because I have a mix of that. And I feel like that has been a gift because I can be a translator between worlds and I
Mm-hmm.
can travel between worlds and I can connect with people who are neurotypical and I can connect with people who are neurodivergent. And while I myself identify as neurodivergent in multiple ways, um, I do feel like I am fortunate that even though it's come at a cost and masking and all of that has been a part of my journey trying to pretend that I was neurotypical, it has given me that like I know how to at least speak in a way that neurotypicals can get it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's led me to recognize actually over time and working with people how much harm there has been unintentionally done by the medical community in pathologizing difference. And I
Mm-hmm.
know there's been a lot of societal reasons for that, and a lot of cultural reasons, and a lot of who were the educated people reasons. But as I've woken up to, like, oh, not only has the medical community caused harm, I myself have unintentionally caused harm. And that was such a like devastating pivot in my career to recognize oh, behaviorism actually really harms people. And I have compassion for myself because I was just doing what I was taught. This is what was evidence based. So we'll get into all that story another time, but it has led me to where I feel like I am a much more open hearted occupational therapist. And I really love the term holistic occupational therapy. And the way my friend Meg, who's also an OT, talks about being a holistic OT is like, I care about what you care about.
Mm.
And there's this beauty in being an occupational therapist where we are trained to understand development in the nervous system and sensory processing and how that applies to day-to-day life.
Hmm.
Um, but I really love just meeting people where they're at and helping them explore their stories and their journeys and supporting them in figuring out what they want to do next. So it's been an honor to weave some of that into our friendship
Hmm.
in this weird, like we started out as kind of like, let's be professional colleagues.
Hmm.
I want to learn from you, you want to learn from me. And then it just this friendship has evolved out of that in a really beautiful, organic way. And I'm just very, very grateful to be here with you today doing this.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think that piece about waking up and recognizing there's aspects of our profession that were rooted in the systemic oppression that many people have experienced. And that is definitely true for me too. So a part of when I first connected with you, I was looking to explore my own sensory differences. And so I decided to go to the START Institute and you weren't there anymore, but I went and got diagnosed with sensory processing disorder and then did a week of occupational therapy there. And what stands out to me the most from that is that everything I had these sort of shorthand ways that I described what I was calling my depression or dysthymia, like just this low grade, suffering that I'd experienced throughout most of my, teen life until now. Um, and when I would say like, oh yeah, sometimes I feel like prickly or sometimes it feels like all my scales are up and everything just is agitating me. Or sometimes I just have like I just need to get in my bed day. And she was like, everything I was using that to describe my depression, she was like, that's a sensory issue. Oh, that's a sensory challenge. And so I was like, I've basically been, misdiagnosing myself. And I have been working with many other clients who have sensory challenges and talking about their depression. And um, I was basically saying like, yeah, it's just painful to be human. It involves a lot of suffering, and let's figure out how we can cope with the suffering of being human. And that was sort of my MO, and I think that did offer a lot of compassion. And I was doing a lot of DBT at the time, and it was sort of not traditional comprehensive dialectical behavior therapy, but my own Diane version. And so I would talk about gentleness in baby steps, like I just need to be really gentle because I'm a highly sensitive person and I feel, the pain of the world a lot. And so what's one small step I can take? What's like one corner of the house I can clean up today or one small snack I can make for myself because the activities of day-to-day living tend to be really challenging for me. And I had a lot of shame about like, why can't I seem to function in the way that other people can? And I had a lot of clients who I was having those discussions with, the shame of like, why can't I have my house be presentable for guests? Or why can't I follow the same routines or seem to keep up with all the things that other people are doing? And there's an element of, um, that I think you just mentioned this last night. There's an element of that, like I'm comparing my insides or my worst moments with other people's highlight reel. But I also think what I've learned from reading Divergent Minds and understanding my own sensory processing differences and neurodivergence in other ways, other aspects, is that there are also, things that are just that my brain is not wired to do, or basically it helps me to think like the world was not designed for super sensitive nervous systems. And so a lot of day-to-day things like going to the grocery store is really overwhelming for me. The lights are bright, it's loud, I have to interact with a lot of different people. I can feel the energy of everyone who's in the store, and there's tons of choices, and there's, it's really overwhelming. And I usually, like I used to growing up, it was this fun thing to do to go to the mall with friends, in the 80s and early 90s. And I would be in the mall for 30 minutes and feel like someone had like drained the life out of me. And it's a very specific feeling. And I just didn't have any understanding or language for why do I feel so miserable after being at the mall for such a short time. So armed with that information now to be like, oh, this is how my brain and body work. Then it's such a different way to live. And I think before in about 2017, I started training to be a self-compassion teacher. And so the mindful self-compassion curriculum that Kristen Neff and Chris Germer developed, that's an 8-week course. I went to Arizona for my 40th birthday and did a retreat there in their program. I did the retreat style instead of the 8-week course. And that was such a transformative thing for me to talk about, instead of this constant barrage of inner criticism, I could be treating myself in the same way I would treat a dear friend. And having some science behind that, like, the interpersonal neurobiology of if I regulate my nervous system, that's a much better way to offer calm and support to other people. And so as a therapist, it was critical to be able to have shorthand ways to be kind to myself and think, what do I need here instead of what's wrong with me here? And as a mother, it was so critical to be like, okay, somebody's having a lot of emotional distress. How do I step away and calm, bring care to my nervous system so that I can hold space for their feelings rather than like, how do I get this to stop? How do I fix it quickly? Um, and so when I had that like foundation of self-compassion on top of my DBT skills, which I know there's lots of criticisms about DBT from a neurodivergent perspective, and I do think I used some of the radical acceptance aspect of DBT to maybe accept things that didn't need to be accepted because I didn't know that I could change or I could design a life that works for my nervous system instead of just be like, well, this is how the world is, and I just have to cope with it. Um, so having the like some of those skills for distraction or, bringing my emotions from a 10 down to a 3, and then layering in the compassion for, I still didn't, I had the highly sensitive person language from Elaine Aron of like and DBT talks about like there's 20%. I used to use the term 20 percenters. There's 20% of us who are just more emotionally sensitive and might be more emotionally reactive than other folks. And um, while some people have a nervous system that's like, I'm upset, and then it goes back down. Other people have a nervous system that's like, I'm upset, and it's even higher than the screen can see.
Uh-huh.
And it stays that way, and it stays that way, and it's much harder to come back into regulation. And the therapy world was exploding with information about, more body-based techniques. And at that time, it was like the body keeps the score and Bessel van der Kolk and heart rate variability and, all these different body-based factors, window of tolerance. But that's just, that's a lot of information to take in. And so it's been this long, slow journey to get a sense of like, what does all of that mean for me and my body and my nervous system? Um, learning from you about getting that diagnosis and then pairing with you to interact like occupational therapy with psychotherapy, has been so, so helpful. And most of my clients identify as neurodivergent now, and we talk so much about our sensory systems and sensory challenges. And so it's really been an inner revolution that has caused lots of lovely ripples in my life.
And it's so awesome to hear you talk about it in like these broad strokes, because there is a little bit of like this story arc of you've been through it and there's been cycles of you've been through it over and over again.
Mhm.
And what's really cool is like each time you've been through it, you've picked up a little piece here and you've picked up a little piece there. And it sounds like it's gotten to this place where you're actually starting to experience integration of your parts and integration of all of these concepts. And what I think is really just beautiful about storytelling and narrating our process and going back and seeing where we've come from is we can recognize how when we didn't have the framing, we didn't have the information, we were telling ourselves a different story.
Hmm.
And we're always, I think, as humans, at least intellectual types, we're always looking for the why and the how does this make sense? And I hear from lots of people that similar to you when you went to get your assessment at Star, the only story that made sense was something was wrong with you.
Hmm.
There was no other explanation.
Yeah.
And there's this desire for please someone fix me or put me out of my misery because it feels
Yeah.
like those are the only two options.
Yeah.
But when you got a different basically lens to view yourself through and you started to understand neurodivergence and sensory processing differences, it really opened you up to, oh, number one, I'm not the only one in the world like this. But number two, like the environment and who I'm around and the activities that I'm engaged in, all of those contribute to how I feel too.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's been empowering for you to be like, let me play with this instead of having that radical acceptance of like, and life is just suffering forever, wah wah.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that's so important about stories. I feel like I had like an Eeyore archetype throughout my childhood. And that, there literally are tons of stories about I didn't smile until I was 6, the famous family story of we took me to the photographer and everyone tried so hard and we told her you weren't going to smile. Um, and and I really resonated with like the wah wah characters like Sadness and Inside Out. I've got an ornament, I've got a Sadness stuffed animal. And I think I think Sadness, like there's a few moments where the character of Sadness in the movie Inside Out just sits down next to someone and says like that makes sense. And you can see how beautiful it is to have that aspect of like whatever you're feeling makes sense. That's so important. And also to have no access to joy is miserable. It's a miserable way to live. And I really want to share throughout this process that I really struggled with suicidal thoughts throughout my whole life. And I want to be transparent about that because I think I appeared to be like a busy mom who who was raising kids and working. I had my own business, and inside I was really miserable, really, really suffering. And it does just feel like it's excruciating to be living outside your window of tolerance all the time and to have an internal dialogue that says like you need to be pushing yourself harder because you're still not keeping up with everyone else and it's you that's the problem and just like pointing out, my flaws constantly. And even when I learned about self-compassion, it's funny because I would teach it to other people and they would be like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm doing it. I feel a lot of compassion to myself." And I'm like, "What? Like I've been practicing this for years and I still have so much self-criticism." And so for it to be so entangled with masking and with these stories about, that started from birth of like I'm not smiley and warm and I can't be a good host. I don't say the right kind of thank yous. I don't have the right kind of gratitude. Um, those stories are get really stuck and they are hard to shake up. And it has taken a continual journey to figure out how to shake the bedrock of those stories. But I really do feel that I have a lot more moments of embodiment and joy and connection and safety. And I'm so, so grateful for that.
Well, I really appreciate your vulnerability in sharing just how bad it was and the depths of that. And I honestly can tell you just how relatable it is. Even with knowing all the things about sensory processing and regulation and window of tolerance. And there was definitely a latent phase for me as well, where it's like, I know these things, but I don't feel them in my body and it's not really landing. And I'm teaching other people how to take care of themselves while I'm struggling to do it. And I just want to go on the record like I'm so glad you're still here. I'm glad I'm still here And I'm really hopeful that for anybody who might be watching who isn't feeling like they've gotten past that hump yet, that there is hope on the other side. And I think that's something that you and I really want to be highlighting and putting into the world is that, yeah, it takes a while to get to that point, especially if there were a lot of messages you picked up early on that were highly critical and you worked so hard to just be perfect, get it right, be a good girl, good boy, just
Yeah.
do this life right, follow
Hmm.
the rules. Um, and at least for the two of us, what we've discovered is that's actually not the path. We've
Yeah.
had to figure out how to go off path
Hmm.
and reclaim ourselves. And what a process that's been.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, I know it's probably about time for us to be bringing it to a close, but I want to circle back to the um the piece about harm, recognizing, I do think we only know what we know and we learn as we go. And but I think that is I started that point and then because when I talk it just goes in all different directions, I forgot to finish it. Um but I think I mentioned like I was telling my clients the story that just learning how to cope with the misery of being human is the best we can do. And and also working in eating disorder facilities for part of my career. Um, so many folks with eating disorders are neurodivergent and have sensory differences, and they have been really harmed by the treatment centers and the way it was done. And I see that changing now. I hear a lot of talk from those treatment centers about neurodivergence and sensory differences. And I'm not in that world as much, so I don't know the specifics of it. But I do know that I really think even the basics of thinking that I know the right answers for someone else is is dangerous. And so I have shifted my work a lot to focusing on how can I support people to find the answers inside of themselves. And that may mean sometimes sharing what's worked for me. And usually people who have a similar nervous system to mine are the people who are drawn to work with me, and people who don't, don't resonate and don't continue or don't, schedule in the first place. Um, but I think that's just so important, what you were saying about like I knew all the things, but I couldn't do them in my body yet. I realized that a lot of times if I was sharing with someone like, well, this is the right way to set a boundary, or this is the right way to speak assertively rather than passive aggressively, if they have parts that don't feel safe to do those things that I'm suggesting, then they're not going to do it. And sometimes it's really painful to know the things and to not be able to do it. And that just contributes to ongoing shame. And so a part of what I've loved about our friendship is that I feel like I've been able to show you parts that I felt really ashamed of. Like sometimes I have really dangerous urges to harm myself, or sometimes um I like can't, I feel so overwhelmed that I can't even move from where I am in that moment. And I might know all the suggestions for what I would tell somebody else to do, but that doesn't mean that my parts, like I have had some really young parts that still needed some companioning to feel safe enough to do the things that my brain knows would be feel in alignment or that I want to do. And really slowing everything down and giving myself the time to rest and to listen and to learn what my body's telling me and to connect with my parts and to sort of welcome them all in. And um, I hope that, we can keep talking about all the aspects of this because I right now can feel all the little firing like, and this and this and this. But I'm going to bring it all in, bring it all in. The point I was trying to make is that I really want in my work going forward to give the message that I believe that like my parts and my body know the way. And figuring out how to listen has been really challenging for me, but that's what I want to help other people to do. I no longer want to be in the like this is the right way to do it or this is the advice giving business. I want to be like let's listen inside of you and see what answers are there.
That's so beautiful. And it's very similar to the conviction that I have around meeting people where they're at and really tuning into their lived experience rather than coming from this expert position of let me diagnose and then prescribe this is how you're going to
Yeah.
manage this or get better,
Yeah.
and to have this like no, let's discover together what is your next step. And I
Mm.
think that really honors where people are at in their process, and it does help you avoid pushing them into shame or overwhelm if they're not ready.
Yeah.
And there are people that just need sadness to come sit next to them and say,
Yeah.
this makes so much sense why this is so hard for you.
Yeah.
And to be with them in that moment, like that is therapeutic. That is at times what's very much needed.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to just piggyback off of is that as you have your own healing journey and the more you have your own lived experience, there is more that you can embody as you teach and support others. And there are times where you can recognize people that are not at the same stage in their journeys as you are. And I think it takes such a compassionate provider to be able to see the possibility of like, this could be better for you. I have hope for you. Um, and I've even had other people talk to me about how when they're working with clients, it's very, very hard for them to say and just stay with where they're at because they might have this frustration like, well, if you would just change this one thing, if you could shift
Mm.
your mindset right here, things would
Yeah.
be so much easier or better for you. But there's this beauty in just meeting people where they're at. And I think that is if there was one takeaway that I could give to like maybe younger therapists or other medical providers would be, just listen. Take time and listen because what people really need more than anything else is to be heard and to be seen and to
Yeah.
feel safe to share like where they're really at, what they
Yeah.
truly need.
Yeah, and I hope that's what can grow out of these conversations is creating that community at the we have a meditation group that we both participate in called Tune Into You, which is a space to really do some of that inner listening. And at the retreats I lead, it's sort of an extension of that, this idea of like even the connection between you and I. Like it feels like it was like a thread out there that I just had to pick up that book at the right time and see your name and reach out and I was like activating the thread of connection that was already planned or already a part of our relationship. And so I've got my red thread bracelet on and I love that idea of that there's red threads of connection, just like the root network of a forest, the mycelial network that connect us to one another. And we really, really need that community of like-hearted people to see us and hold space for us. And over the past, I mean, it's hard to pinpoint a time of when this started, but let's go with 2020. Um, so that would be 5 years. There have been so many women who have been a part of my Red Thread network on this journey I've had to wake myself up and shake up the bedrock of those old harmful beliefs I had about myself. And so I'm excited to see, who else joins our Red Thread network and who else is drawn to our stories about our healing journey. And I hope we can create a network that, stretches far and wide to folks who need a thread to hang on to, because I think we're in times where our bedrock is shaking, for so many of us. And when things feel chaotic, we do have that question of like, who's going to hold me through this? How, I feel alone and scared and unsure. And so that's a part of my vision for our conversations is to strengthen that weaving, that co-weaving we can do with like-hearted people that can hold us all.
Which is such a beautiful and shared dream that I've really been recognizing how much connection and community is so key. And I think there's this beauty in healing together where I'm not doing it for you and you're not doing it for me. We're doing it for ourselves, but we're doing it together.
Hmm.
And those that interweaving of our threads, it's so helpful to have a companion, to have a network, to have other people who may have resources to share with you, like that mycelial network,
Mm-hmm.
in just that moment when you need it the most. And I love this idea of, yeah, we're putting our feelers out there right now to say, who wants to come join us? Who wants to share their stories too? And not necessarily on YouTube Live. We're not going to make you do that anytime soon, but yeah, who is interested in, who is feeling like that thread of connection with our stories and our journeys? Because we would just love to continue to weave that network with more people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, I'm glad we figured it out, and I'm really looking forward to continuing these conversations.
Yeah.
And I think our plan is to do this as many Fridays as we can.
Mm-hmm.
We both have busy lives, but when we can do it, we want to keep doing this.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll see you sometime soon on another live.
Yeah. Sounds good.